Alright guys, good morning. I'm Mark Will, and this is going to be a no-nonsense, fast-hitting video on gathering. Gathering actually isn't overly complicated, and so I'm just going to run straight through this and get to the meat of a major takeaway that I think is going to be very important for people to be aware of as the game enters alpha and beta and is doing testing. So here we go. So the gathering professions, they're pretty basic guys: farming, fishing, herbalism, lumberjacking, mining, and taming for animal husbandry. I think everyone's excited about the taming profession. I think that one's the one that stands out and is unique for an MMO space. So not going to go down those and get too far into any of these because until we see what they produce, I think the producibles are more interesting than the actual professions themselves. Going hitting a rock or collecting an herb, I mean, it's very basic, not worth talking about too much. All right, moving on. Some gathering basics. Gathering tools will be required to collect resources, so pickaxe, scythe, what have you. Some resources will move around the world, such as herds. Taking a step back, you also have like backpacks, depending on what type of playstyle you're doing. If you're doing gathering, you'll want a certain backpack. If you're doing adventuring, you'll want a certain type of backpack to carry more of certain types of items. For gatherers and crafters, it might increase your gathering rate or your crafting rate, so just be aware there seems to be some element of that that'll be introduced to the game. I have asked in the past, and I don't believe that there'll actually be a full gathering gear set like in Albion, so that doesn't seem to be something that's present in Ashes of Creation, like the path they're going down, but it might be some kind of a consumable that boosts your rate, or maybe a specific tool that enhances your gathering speed, but it won't be a full set of gathering gear as you've seen in Albion and other games like it. Gathering resources will tend to be at large gathering areas like a mine and deplete over time. So it mentions on the wiki that there's going to be centrally located types of gathering areas where many gatherers will go and try to get protection from PvPers in a group. It doesn't say that they'll be instanced. It might be, we don't know yet. It might require some kind of tool just to access, but that's not mentioned. That's just something I'm spitballing. But for the most part, it looks like it's going to be a main area you have to go. You're going to collect a lot of materials in one area. And there's also the potential of what they mentioned as an extractor. So if you place a freehold adjacent to or next a large gathering resource area like a mine, a group of players or a wealthy player can build an extractor and then potentially hire NPCs to go collect the resources, and you wouldn't have to do it yourself, which would be a major boon for the gathering tree and profession. Going down that path, or professions rather, enhance your ability to improve your ROI, because you don't have to be present. You can go do other activities, and it's going to be collecting the resources on your behalf, which would really speed things up and be a nice change for gatherers. So something to be aware of. I'm going to post a picture of the list of resources. I'm not going to go through them all right here, but you guys can see them while I'm talking through the rest. And now on to the really major impactful thing that I want to make this video for: looting rights. Wow. So Master Gatherers apparently have a superpower. I had never heard of this before, and I believe that a lot of you will probably know this superpower already in the past. But for new players like myself that are coming on and really starting to gain knowledge about the game this past year and going forward, I can tell you I've dug into the wiki more than most players will, and this is the first time I've heard about it, so I think this is good information to share and keep putting out there so people are aware of it. And again, disclaimer, this is all pre-alpha testing. All this is subject to change, and in the video I'm going to play with you guys, or for you guys here in a second, you will see that Stephen very explicitly states that this is all subject to testing, and make sure that it's confirmed and verified as a good foundation of the systems they want to have in place. But here we go. So I'm going to roll the tape, and let me know what you guys' thoughts are.
Few thoughts on that, and those few thoughts need to be tested when it comes to the design of the tag system, whether or not it be from a gatherers. Okay, so remember, we have gatherers, we have processors, we have crafters. Part of gathering is being able to, I guess, spoil, the loot from a particular creature and or boss or something. So if you want to be able to get those mats from the boss, they're just not going to drop for anybody. They will only drop for a master gatherer who is capable of extracting those resources from the creature itself. So it is the reason why we say there's a lot of interdependencies between the crafters of the world and the raiders of the world and or PvPers of the world is because We don't want to house the capability to attain these things all within the adventuring class. We want there to be an influence necessary from the Craftsman's Guild to either come and participate and spoil the boss and gather the goods or something along those lines.
All right, so now that you guys have listened to that clip, what do you think? Will Gatherer's spoil loot ability trump a party's master looter option? To me, it sounds that way. It sounds like this spoil loot ability for gatherers to cast on a boss will actually override all other looting rights that the party has in place and make it so that the master gatherer is the only one that's going to be able to collect the gatherables and rare materials and resources that the boss would drop normally. Part of the testing they want to probably perform, guys, is whether or not they want to have, so if the master gatherer isn't present, will the boss just not drop those materials regardless? It sounds like it would, but if a master gatherer is present, they can spoil it to try to take priority for those. But one thing I think that they'll have to be careful with this kind of system is that parties might just not bring along a gatherer because you don't want to risk that they'll use their spoil loot ability if there's not a trust factor involved. So it's like, hey, John the Gatherer, are you going to use a spoil loot ability? Do you promise not to? If you promise not to, and you know if you do, we're going to G-kick you, you can come along. But just know if you do that, we're going to G-kick. And then otherwise, some guilds, if there's not a high trust factor, they won't even ask. They know you're a Master Gatherer. You won't be invited to a party because they want to split the materials themselves or have a cut of it. But if they know if they bring you along, you're going to take it all. So there's going to be some elements of inter-party dynamics and guild functions and player interactions here, which I think is pretty cool. So regardless, the Gathering branch will now be a hotly contested issue in the game, as it will have control over looting rights for large party PvE content. So potentially world bosses and the like. PvE players already have the large PvP concern in Ashes of Creation with open world hunting grounds and such. And on top of that, apparently now the artisans also get to have the last laugh, so to speak, in the Gathering tree over PvE players. So what you need to know and take away from this video is this. If you are a player who intends to primarily be interested in PvE raid-styled content, you should 100% take Gathering as your artisan branch to master. Not to actually gather for wealth and do that as your main activity in the game, but to reach mastery over the Gathering tree as soon as possible to protect the looting rights and capability of your preferred gameplay, i.e. PvE. This will undoubtedly represent a challenge to players when they start the game. Is it better to sprint through the adventure vertical progression tree of your character to level cap straight away? Or will it be better to focus on Gathering early on in order to protect your looting return and actually potentially increase it over other players in your party who haven't mastered Gathering? So you could actually use it to increase your intake, so to speak. And that would be for all future PvE group play that you participate in after you've mastered Gathering. And you can continue to cast spoil loot anytime you please on these bosses. This is pre-alpha, that's all subject to testing. This all might change, it might be wiped out completely. I have not heard of any other class, tree, anything that has a super ability to a similar extent and power as a node's superpower. So like the scientific node has teleportation, the military node might have some, combat buff, the divine node might have a PvE, catacombs or labyrinth, and economic has the auction houses system that's going to be set up. But this one ability is, I would argue, on par with a node superpower because again, it is a direct intake and volume increaser. This is going to be like a leveraging ability for all your time in game. So you're doing all these raids, and every time you do one, you can cast this ability, again, increase the volume of resources, loot that you're going to be able to collect compared to your peers. So one thing I was thinking about, guys, is just, I can imagine, say like you're doing like 4 to 6 hours of hard dungeon raiding, and if it's not shown what your intake is and your peers can't see how much you're gathering when you do the spoil loot, you might be walking away after 4 to 6 hours of doing a party hard dungeon raiding with your guild. They might be all walking out there on the normal mounts because they barely got anything and they're empty pocketed. And you might be having to ask somebody to carry all the goods for you because all your stacks are maxed. You literally could be coming out and have to use a caravan. Your guild members that were doing the same exact time play might actually just able to use their normal mount or at most a mule. Probably even a normal mount, because if you're looting so much of it, I imagine you're going to have them carry some of it, or else you're going to actually have to use a mule or a caravan just to haul it all back if you're doing a large amount of PvE raiding for an extended period of time, which a lot of players do. It's not necessarily my thing, but I see this being a hotly contested and discussed issue as we approach game launch. And again, if you are a PvE player, I would highly recommend right now to consider and do some due diligence into looking into this, because it might be a strategic gameplay for you and it'll help you make wealth in the national creation. So if you're trying to make wealth right now, the number one thing besides just doing economic type of activity and moving goods around that I've seen is going to be based upon this ability itself. If you're able just to take in a large multiplier more than your peers for the same content you're running, that is a very large strategic advantage and is going to be a significant way to make more money over the long term. But there are going to be social ramifications to that. Either you're going to be using the spoil loot ability to take it, and your guild will say, okay, you took this, if you want to remain in the guild, you must use this for guild purposes. Over a matter of time, it's going to be hard to stay in groups or be invited back to PvE content, because you're going to be taking so much of the loot and they're going to know it, and you're not going to be welcome in those parties. So this is going to be a very interesting dynamic as to, are you honest or are you going to try to pocket, skim off the top, so to speak. So this is going to be a challenge for guilds and alliances to kind of combat and try to have control over. And I imagine all PvE players will just get to the point where they are master gatherers, so everyone's just saying spoil loot. So you have a party of 8, and at least 6 of the 8 are going to be doing spoil loot, so that they make sure that they protect their ability to get a cut of the take, so to speak, and it's not all going to just one player who's going to run off with it. All right, guys, so that's the video. I hope this helps you out. Just food for thought. Let me know your guys' thoughts below. If you like the video, if you like the content, please do subscribe, comment below, hit the like button. I appreciate you all. Hope you guys have a great day, and take care. Bye-bye.